We are actually live. Ba, 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 ba. Hey, man, how you doing? What? How you been? Brother Kivan, I guess Kivan's sister Yvonne, that's my sister Kayla. Nice to meet you, Yvonne. Yes. Okay, so thank you guys for being here this morning. I appreciate it. For those that don't know, this is a Thursday morning breakfast. We do this every Thursday morning, and the idea behind the event is that we want to be the bridge between all of the good that goes on in the city with those that need that good to be done in their lives. So the parent organization for Thursday morning breakfast is the Grow for Care Alliance. GROW is an acronym, CARE is an acronym. GROW is generating real opportunities to win, and CARE is community action results empowerment. So when you put them together, it's generating real opportunities to win for community, for action, for results, for empowerment. So there's a lot of good that goes on in our city, and for whatever reason, that good doesn't always reach the people that need it most in their lives. So we want to be the bridge between the two, and we have Thursday morning breakfast to introduce the community to people and entities who are wanting to do good, who are doing good, so that the community can know about it and hopefully support the persons who are doing that work as they continue to move forward. I don't care what anyone says they're doing without community support. You're probably not going to be doing it for long, or you're doing something that's bad and the community don't need to support you. So we're here to highlight the good and to connect the community with those persons that are doing that work. So as you guys know, there is a very heated, a very busy election going on right now for the 18th Congressional seat. And despite the fact that the lines have been redrawn as it relates to those districts, there's still an election by which we have to elect someone for that seat. And therefore, I think within a year, they have to run again, for some new seats, which is really going to be interesting because the demographics of those seats have all changed, and they're not the Democrat districts we've become accustomed to as it relates to the populations, but they're going to be more on the Republican side. But that doesn't mean that a Democrat or Democrat-minded person can't win. It just means that you have to go out and introduce yourself to these Republican-thinking people and get them to understand that we do have common interests and common goals. So our speaker this morning is Brother Kivan. Polimis?
Polimis, yeah.
Polimis.
Yes.
Polimis. Okay, what is that?
Caribbean.
Oh, watch out. All right. Polimis. That's new. It's not Jones. It's new. Okay. So I'm going to read the brother's bio and bring him up. Then he's going to let us know why we should vote for him and support him for his run for the 18th Congressional seat district. Okay. Brother Kivan said he's a proud naturalized citizen. He grew up in Baytown and lives near Emancipation Park. He knows the value of public investment from attending public schools, relying on local libraries, exercising, in public parks, and having his graduate education being supported by the National Science Foundation. Amen. He understands, how sowing investments into individuals and communities leads to a society that reaps the rewards of capable citizens and nurturing neighborhoods. He was a senior policy advisor to Judge Lena Hidalgo, where he led initiatives to reduce homelessness, expand affordable housing, and modernize government systems by leveraging research and data analysis to design smarter, more responsive policies. Brother Kivan's background is at the intersection of public policy, statistical analysis, and technology. So on that note, can we give a warm applause and welcome for Brother Kivan Polimis from the Caribbean.
Thank you, everyone. Excited to be here. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Y'all get it, brother, some energy. Come on, man. Pretend we in church. That energy matters. That's right. Give it back to him. He's trying to do a good thing. Y'all get a brother some energy.
Put that all out. Yeah. Wait, so just want me to introduce myself right now?
Yeah, man, because we
Okay.
don't know you. We don't know you. Come on
Okay.
now.
So thank you for the introduction, Tamani. I wanted to elaborate a bit more about myself. As Tamani mentioned, I was a former policy advisor for Judge Lena Hidalgo, so I have experience in both the public, private sector, and I also own my own small business. When I was with Judge Hidalgo, we worked on initiatives that helped reduce the plight of homeless individuals in the county by focusing on community-centered ways to build housing first models, leading to more permanent supportive housing centered around comprehensive care models where people not only get housing, but they also get the suite of services, job services, counseling services that they need to be better and fully integrated into the community. I also am a data scientist, which is a mix of software engineering and statistics. And so I work in a space where I'm very aware of the new technologies that are coming and how they are going to change our society, I think dramatically, both for the good and potentially there may be downside effects there. And I also lecture at the University of Washington, and I think that really buttresses my technological background. As I mentioned, an awareness of the sea change of the issues that are coming on. We're going to see a lot of displacement for children and all people trying to change careers because of the advancements of artificial intelligence, these AI applications, and somebody who's forward thinking and aware of how these technologies work and their potential to displace the workers that we have in our community is something that is very important. But I think lastly, what sets me apart is my vision. I believe in an investment society. As Samani mentioned, I'm a product of public goods. I went to public schools. I enjoyed public parks. I learned at public libraries. And these universal public goods that we all have access to, this is a society that I'm trying to recreate. I'm trying to call back to the New Deal era and also the civil rights era and the Great Society era. The problems that we have in our present, we've seen the solutions in the past. And what we learned from the New Deal is, I remember seeing a sign, a 1940s Texas Democratic Party sign. The New Deal has brought us rural electrification and telephones, farm to market roads, Social Security, including unemployment insurance, child welfare, and old age pensions. And I want that to be the message for the Democratic Party going forward, an investment society that changes the material quality and the material lives of individuals and doesn't, just kneel in kente cloth in the Capitol, but actually delivers material benefits to people's everyday lives. And so that's why I'm running to make sure that we build this investment society, that we take care of our citizens from the cradle to the grave.
Okay. Thank you for that, brother. I'll start with the easiest question, which is, and I think you answered this just to be clear. You are running because you benefited from things that you believe are in jeopardy of no longer being there.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So can you elaborate on that really quick as far as specifically the things that you know? Because I was watching, I am watching a new, I'm not sure if it's a documentary or a movie, but it's new on Hulu last night. I think it's called 2073, 2072. And it's really, really, really good because they're showing footage from things that happened in the late 90s and early 2000s and how those things are affecting our lives today and how life could look in 2073. But of course, people don't pay attention to the information and they don't connect the dots. So can you tell us what you are specifically seeing that's changing now in 2025 and why you think those things are in jeopardy of no longer being available in the future, the near future?
Absolutely, yeah. So I will start with the social safety net. I think a lot of people are aware that there are a lot of people in this district. I think the poverty rate in the district is about 22%. And so we have anywhere between 1 in 4 and 1 in 3 individuals who either are on SNAP, on Medicaid, and then if you add in Medicare. And so these programs, they're fraying. They are being intentionally undermined by rapid defunding. We're going to see about $1 billion in Medicaid cuts. That's going to dramatically change the health of our community. We're seeing a lot of changes to the SNAP program. That's going to change the ability for people to provide nutrition to themselves and to their families. And so this tremendous fraying of the safety net is something that we're going to see going forward unless we act to build a social safety net that supports all people. In my professional capacity, I work with government organizations such as the Center for Disease Control, CDC, And one of the things that we see going on now is the data that we need to assess the changes societally. So something like the National Survey for Drug Use and Health, we see these statistics are going away. We see statistics about gun violence going away. So our ability to measure change in our society is also being impacted by the current administration. So not only are they unraveling the social safety net, they're also taking away our ability to keep track statistically and account for the change, the positive and negative changes that's occurring in our community, and what we can do to diagnose and solve these problems.
Amen. Good answer. So I have several questions. So if anybody else has a question, just let me know, and then you can jump in. I do a lot of reading. I watch a lot of videos as it relates to the changes in society. Everything you're saying is spot on. I don't think I've heard anyone speak that authoritatively to the facts of the reality in 2025, which is very, very, very important. But as you probably also know, everything you said, although you're correct, the current administration doesn't care. So if you were to win the 18th Congressional seat, how are you going to get people who seemingly don't give a damn to understand the importance of your message? How are you going to get them to open up and realize
Absolutely.
that they're with people?
Yeah, thank you. And so the reason I talked about my politics being grounded in the New Deal and also the Great Society and the Civil Rights Movement, because not only were these political movements, these were social movements that exerted pressure with groups such as the labor movement in the New Deal era, the labor movement helping bring the unemployment insurance, helping bring the 40-hour work week, helping bring overtime, and also the civil rights era put pressure on someone like President LBJ, put pressure on some, JFK. So having these social movements where we have civic organizations, labor movements, in combination with our political power showing up at the ballot box, we need social movements and political representation. And so I will be very supportive of these social movements, civic organizations, labor movements, in order to build outside pressure, to not just exert pressure on Capitol Hill, but to exert pressure more globally.
So you think these social organizations can put pressure on the Trump administration?
Absolutely. I think that we can have labor organizations. I think something along the lines of a strike. You know, we haven't talked about something like a general strike in this community if people stayed home and abstained for a day or two. We see this going on right now in Israel. There have been general strikes multiple times for them to make demands to bring the hostages back home. They've had several general strikes. And I think we together as a society, we can come together and do collective action like a general strike in order to demand change.
I agree with that. It sounds awesome. However, people are stubborn. People are aloof. Since February of last year, I was doing multiple events, both on and offline, to make the community, Black community specifically, but the grassroots community in general, aware of the reality of this Project 2025 thing that everybody's talking about. Our Juneteenth event was about Project 2025. We had at least, I don't know, 8 events total over a few months. But people were either in denial. They said this is a Democrat scare tactic. This can't be real. They can't do this. Blah, 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 blah. And here we are in August 2025, and they're ahead of schedule. So I agree with you. However, you know, people are disconnected from reality more often than they should be. So how are you going to get people to wake the hell up and realize that if we don't, as a collective, strike, push back, don't go to work, or whatever, then the America we've come to recognize and appreciate and enjoy is not going to be the same America in a few years. So how are you going to get people to actually wake up and do what you just said, which I agree has to be done, but people are lazy and disconnected.
Yeah, I think that people are living their lives, right?
Yeah,
I think
they are living their lives. Good answer.
People are very busy. They have, childcare, elder care, work. There are a lot of responsibilities that people have. And so I think it's incumbent on us who have a bit more time, like yourself and I, in order to continue to increase the education of the community. And so, what I'm doing is via social media, trying to explain a lot of these issues you mentioned with Project 2025, what is actually going on with these changes. I think the Republicans were very clever in that all these Medicaid changes, they're not going to take place until after the next election, 2026.
Right.
So all the stuff that we're talking about now, they're going to point to like no one's Medicaid has been cut, no one's SNAP benefit has been cut. That's true. They're going to be cut in 2026. And so I think making sure that people are educated and aware of what these bills that they passed, like the billionaire budget grab bill, the OBB,
Right.
they call it the beautiful whatever.
Big people bill.
Yeah, exactly. The complete monstrosity that is. I think it's incumbent on people like us to educate people with social media channels, via community channels, church groups, these other kind of organizations, to raise awareness that these changes haven't occurred yet, but they are set to happen in law. This $1 billion in Medicaid cuts will happen. These changes are going to happen. So we need to raise awareness in order to not make people, cataclysmic and concerned about, the sky falling, but there are going to be massive changes to our communities that we need to make people aware of.
Yeah, no doubt. I am 54 years old. You look like you're a bit younger than me. I'm assuming you've never run for office before?
No, this is my first time running for office.
Okay, and you're running for a big one.
Yes.
So what makes you think you can win being such a young person with no political experience? Because that's a question that people are going to ask.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I would respond that first. I do have political experience, right?
Okay,
So I was a senior policy advisor for Judge Hidalgo, and I just wanted to speak really quickly on a couple of those projects. So we worked on homelessness and housing. I mentioned a bit earlier the permanent supporting housing project that we did, but recently the judge's office and the commissioner's court, they did a $15 million purchase via the Harris County Community Land Trust in order to buy 100 homes that's going to maintain affordable housing stock for individuals. And that's something that, I wrote policy memos for and I pushed for. So I've worked with, developers in the community. I've worked with, the continuum of care organizations that support homelessness, like the Catholic Charities, like the Coalition for the Homeless. So I have worked in government and understand the private and public partnerships that you need to build effective policy.
Right.
So I have that experience. And a long time ago too, I was an intern for, he was then Councilman Gonzalez in District H, now know him as Sheriff Gonzalez. So I have some experience politically as well. So that would be my first response. But yes, I mean, I think that being a young person is definitely something people are going to ask questions about. But the thing is, no one in this race has been a congressperson before, right? We've lost Sheila Jackson Lee, we've lost Congressman Turner. And so this is going to be new for everybody here. And so I think what is going to be most important is, are you being represented in your political system by somebody who has the same values and the same beliefs that you do? And I'm here to tell you that this bold vision of a social welfare state is something that the other candidates are not going to talk to you about. Right now, we have 330 million Americans. More than half of Americans are not tied to the labor force. We have 50 million children in K through 12. We have tens of millions of disabled people. We have millions of caregivers. We have almost 70 million retired people. We have to build a society that protects people and provides sustenance to them when they are not tied to the labor market. These are all stages in life that we will pass through. I left my student stage. I'm now in the prime of my working stage, but I will, hopefully one day want to be retired. And I'm trying to present a society where we have investments all throughout those stages when people are not tied to the labor force. So child allowance when in universal pre-K when people are young, making public college free. So we know that students don't have income. So we make public college affordable. We give them a stipend. When you get to old age, we have old age pension programs. We have disability benefits. We need to make a society that looks out for the 170 million Americans not tied to the labor force, and also be aware of these massive changes in employment that are coming via AI. I listen to a lot of these other candidates talk about job retraining. No, I'm a professor at the University of Washington, and I'm here to tell you that this artificial intelligence growth is going to rapidly distort the economy. We've seen the CEO of Anthropic, Dario Modi, said in the next 1 to 5 years, unemployment can go as high as 10, 15, 20%.
Yep.
It's 160 million people in the labor force.
Yep.
We're looking at tens of millions of unemployed people. What are we going to do if we become a society that, because of rapid technological advancement, our young people can no longer find jobs? And these issues and this vision is something I think that sets me apart from the other candidates.
Amen. Ms. Putnam?
Well, I stepped away someone they had asked you this question, but why did you not run for something on a local basis, like city council, but you jumped
Yeah, well, I would actually say this is one of the things that I take inspiration from our current president, in the fact that if he's not unqualified for the job, then that's a whole different discussion. But what I see from him that I want to incorporate is that I'm capable of doing anything, right? This guy was on his couch doing, watching reruns of The Apprentice, and tweeting about President Obama, and he decided that he could be the most powerful person on earth.
Yes.
So I would say to that the belief in yourself and what you're possible of, I don't want that to be limited by I have to, follow things in a certain kind of order or anything like that. I think that the reason I wanted to really jump in this race, as I mentioned, is I think that the vision that's being articulated by some of the other candidates is very much keeping in line with the status quo. And I'm here to tell you that we need dramatic changes to the status quo. We need, for instance, to change the amount of people in the House of Representatives. We've talked about the changes in redistricting. We don't have adequate representation because there's a law that was passed in 1911 that fixed the House of Representatives at 435 people. The House of Representatives needs to grow. It should be about 700 people. We have longer term goals that we need to do to get more representation, like get rid of the Senate, get rid of the Electoral College, get rid of these anti-democratic institutions that is diminishing our ability to have representation. We have millions of people in Puerto Rico and DC who don't have voting rights. We need to make sure that these individuals can participate in our society. And so that's why I'm running, because these things aren't being said. I don't know if we've had another candidate tell you that we need DC and Puerto Rico to be represented in the Senate, right? And these are the kinds of the reasons that I think that we should be running. I'm running, I think, on a bold vision for we need to dramatically change our society, just like the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, abolishing slavery, equal representation, right? These dramatic changes that we had to our society, we need dramatic changes now, both in law and also in amendments as well, too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Very good answer.
Indeed.
I appreciate it.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
I live in zip code 77022. Which I have property in zip code 77088. And I guess to piggyback on what this young lady said a little bit earlier in reference to how this affects me today and on my street and my area. As far as a congressional representative, what do you have a line? I understand the bigger picture as far as like what she said, to understand the people that are in those zip codes or in those areas right now. What do you have that you could convince me or tell me that you will be the best candidate to represent me in my zip code for the issues that I have? And I don't know if you're familiar with the issues that are in zip code 77022 or zip code 77088. But that is in the 18th district. So I was just saying, what would you say to me? I understand the global, the bigger picture, but like you said, it's what's familiarizing yourself with the people on the ground, actually doing the work, living in these spaces. What can you say to that?
Good question. Good question.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of local changes that I believe in is running as well too. Like, yes, I think that there are these national big picture changes. So some of the local changes, so we have a lot of blight in our communities, right? We have a lot of businesses that were formerly present and they've been abandoned, and now you have, homeless individuals maybe making encampments around them. So what are we going to do in terms of, these blighted neighborhoods or these blighted businesses? What are we going to do about gentrification is, rapidly changing and displacing people who have lived here for, decades. As I mentioned, I live by Emancipation Park.
What you actually want to do toward that in?
Yeah, so towards that end, I think towards gentrification, for one of the things that we could do is not only do we need the new development, but the people who have had their homes for decades, who are seeing their property taxes continue to rise because of new developments coming online. Is there something that we can do to lock in the property taxes for homes that have been there generationally? Versus, I moved into my neighborhood about 2021. We've had, some 500,000 properties go up. And in that time span, my property has gone up as well. Somebody who's lived here for generations, I don't think that their property necessarily needs to go up. Their property taxes should go up just because their neighbors are, having new investments. And so I think also, not only would we look at locking in property taxes for these communities that have already been in place, could we do something like create grants to rehabilitate some of these homes? I walk around in my community and people have signs in their window that say, this home is not for sale. People want to remain in place. People want to stay where they are. Can we do things to provide grants to rehabilitate current homes, rehabilitate abandoned businesses on the ground, have that, general sense of a functioning society where we don't see disorder with, homelessness in the streets? I think these are some of the things that we can do, especially mentioned around housing in terms of, locking in property taxes and development grants for people who have owned properties for decades.
How do you put in place a program that like grandfathers in or ties in to locking in those particular, tax breaks or?
Yeah, I would want to write legislation that does that. So I would want to, write legislation that's mentioned, using exactly the term that you use. And so we want to grandfather in people. So if, your dad owned this home and he passed it on to someone in the family, or if the person, still lives in the home who's owned it for decades, I want to change the tax code that make sure that people who have been in these gentrifying neighborhoods that are rapidly changing, that their property taxes aren't changing. I think this is something that needs to be done legally. I think also the grants, these rehabilitation grants, that's something that we would pass legislation to do as well. Yeah, I've done around affordable housing. I've done some legislation. I mentioned the community land trust. So that was where the Harris County Community Land Trust, they purchased 100 homes with around $15 million. So I've worked with, developers in the communities and also people on the ground in terms of what does affordable housing look like and how do we build affordable housing stock and maintain our affordable housing stock as well.
So when did you been on that? Okay, hold on. When did you decide to run? When did you say, okay, I need to get in this race? What month? It's August. What month did you decide I need to get in this?
I decided sometime around April.
April.
I would say.
Okay,
Yeah.
and did you make that decision after looking at the current slate of candidates, realizing, okay, well, I bring what I bring, and I see things that these people do not bring, and decide, okay, well, I need to get into this thing, because I'm bringing things that nobody else brings. So did you take time to look at the other candidates and you saw shortcomings, if you will, that you could shore up because you were bringing things to the table that they were not bringing?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. One of the things that I noticed is there needs to be an antagonism to the Democratic Party
Yeah.
that our current candidates don't have. We have to look at what has Chuck Schumer brought for us.
Yeah.
I was listening to the morning show
Yeah.
this week. Charlemagne called Hakeem Jeffries Apoc Shakur, right? Like we need somebody who's going to say not only to Republican leadership, but also to Democratic leadership, you're not delivering for us.
Right.
You're not good enough right now for us. And I think that is one of the things that I've seen with the other candidates. I think a lot of people want to play nice. I don't want to play nice. I want to represent you. And if somebody like Hakeem Jeffries, Apoc Shakur in Charlemagne's language is not delivering for people, I want to be somebody who's on the front lines telling him, less sitting on the steps, less kneeling in kente cloth, and more material changes to people's lives. And I think when I look around at the current candidates, they're not antagonistic towards the Democratic Party. Obviously, people are antagonistic towards this current president and this Republican Party, as we should be.
Yeah.
But it's more than that. We need to hold the Democratic Party's feet to the fire as well. And that's something I don't think other Democratic candidates are willing to do.
You are correct. Kivan?
Yeah, so I'm kind of piggyback off of what she said. So I think it would be great to write a policy that helps people stay in their homes, right?
Yes.
So since you're working, Tony, about this.
Yes.
Are you able to now encourage them to help them write the policies to do that now, so people can't wait? There are communities that are being put out of their homes because they can't pay the HOA dues. And there are intentionally some groups or whatever management that's building these communities for the HOAs, and then people don't understand that they need to pay them, or they're not entitled to what the situation is. So those policies need to be written now. We can't afford to wait till next year or whenever.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm no longer with the judge's office. So I was with the judge's office. So I can't right now.
But you can still make that suggestion, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, in Commissioner's Court, and that's something we can all participate in as well too. Commissioner's Court has open sessions as well.
Because I think a lot of people don't understand the impact that policy actually makes in our everyday lives.
Yep. Yep.
You understand that,
Yep.
I understand that.
Yep.
So most people don't know that we can just go to them, but they may not listen to us because, they may or may not, I'm just saying that. Like if you said today that I'm gonna write this policy and I'm gonna take it to whoever, you'll have people here that'll maybe go with you to enforce that, to say, we have community members that are interested in that policy that's gonna help our people today.
Yeah.
And I can get with you later, because
Yeah.
there's another council person that said that we have a policy to implement or idea, we can bring it to them, so.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea. I, from my time in the county, like obviously know people in Judge Hidalgo's office, but we have, 4 precincts, precinct, Commissioner Ellis's office, Commissioner Garcia's office. I have friends in all these places. So yeah, I think that's definitely something,
Yeah.
we have a lot of bright people working for the county. I think if
If
we
we get the policy down in front of them.
absolutely, yeah, no, that's something that I think we could try to bring that to commissioners
Those
court.
ideas, come from people with the ideas to say, this is the policy that we need to write, can you hear this? The comments come from the community.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's something that you mentioned that we could do that now. Like, I think
Okay.
that's something that we could try to bring to the commissioners court's attention for sure.
So
Miss Fontenot, I'm sorry.
Ms. Fontenot, yes,
Yeah.
yes, she's our resident rebel.
See, I don't mind stepping into that lion's den and fight. And you seem to be a fighter.
Yes,
Not
ma'am.
into this only, but what you got right here. So I would be behind you on that part. And I speak a lot at commissioners court and city council, and they don't like me, but that's okay too. I'm good with that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ms. Fontenot. And I'm recalling what FDR said, what things that have happened to MLK, right? Like we have to have enemies in the sense of who are the people who are trying to stop you from doing it. I know that FDR mentioned, I welcome their hatred when he talked about the corporations trying to defeat the New Deal. Everyone told MLK not to be anti-Vietnam because that would antagonize Democrats like LBJ who would help these Great Society programs. But it's not good enough to say that I'm concerned about what you're going to do negatively to impact me. You have to have what MLK called the positive piece, right? We have to have the presence of justice. That's what we need, right? We need a positive piece. We don't need a negative piece, not one where people are not being abused, but we actually need the presence of justice. And to advocate for justice is going to ruffle feathers.
Amen. Ms. Renetta?
Frank said, and also what I said, what also what Mr. Fontenot said is that specifically, what are you doing, or what can we jump into to help with what have you accomplished in the past? I hear the broader picture. I don't see and understand where you're coming from in reference to, I understand working in an office is one thing, but I also understand the policy and the getting behind something that getting on a train or a vehicle that is moving your issue forward. And I haven't heard a candidate talk about getting on a vehicle that moves the issue forward from 77022 to 77088. So that's what I'm saying as far as the policies. What if, why would I get on a train with you and I haven't seen you really do anything to go forward in what I'm interested in a nice way?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms like I mentioned, I'm no longer in government, so I don't have that capacity. But I think as Yvonne mentioned, other people mentioned, we can still petition our government as well too as people who are citizens. And so I'm involved in that process as well too. But I think in terms of building a vehicle, this is where we have lacked representation, right? I think that vehicle would first.
You do it. And I have to go in a little because I have another class to go to the 9:45. But I'm just saying, I was going to come and give a speaker and, get some information.
Yes, ma'am.
That kind of thing, but I just don't see up here where it is that candidate is telling me where they're going and I should be on their train.
Yeah, I think like as mentioned, part of what I'm trying to do is build more social movement influence, right? So the strengthening these civic organizations, right, religious organizations. I think that this is kind of where our power has to be exerted right now. There's no one in the 18th seat. And so in terms of what is the vehicle that's going to start to move things and get us across the finish line, I would say right now it's these institutions that we have in our communities, right? It's being vocal within our church, being vocal in these kind of civic organizations. If you're in a union, participating that way. There are a lot of vehicles. Politics isn't something that we just show up every 2 or 4 years and get done. I think politics is something that happens every single day. And so I would say in terms of what I'm doing now is trying to strengthen these local movements in order to, whenever we get political power, exert those social movement control over the political movement as well.
So, Ms. Renetta, his answer to my next question is gonna be the answer to what you asked.
Let me know.
Yeah, well, he's about to tell you, I'm gonna ask this question, and then his answer is gonna be what you wanna hear, what you need to hear. Because your questions are valid, her questions are valid.
But she said her.
I am. I had to explain that part. Okay, so explain to everyone, Ms. Renetta specifically, what social democracy is and why a new deal is so important.
Okay.
Now his answer, nobody else is talking about. Go ahead.
Yeah, so what social democracy is that we have these democratic institutions, right? That we, think about, voting and so on and so forth. But what the social aspect adds to it is undergirding this safety net into our existence. Like, what does it mean to be a U.S. citizen from cradle to grave? What is owed to you? What do you owe other people? What are the obligations that we have to one another in the community? And that's why I mentioned we have, half of Americans are not tied to the labor force. So when we want to practice social democracy, we want to be inclusive of all the individuals in our society, whether, it's somebody who's 3 years old and they need universal pre-K, or it's somebody who because of some misfortune becomes disabled, people who are looking to retire. We want to build these social institutions that support people at every phase in our life, because we all transition in and out of the labor market, and we can't let the labor market, for instance, determine if we have health insurance, right? Through no fault of your own, your company might become acquired, you might become laid off, and you would end up losing your health insurance. And so what social democracy is doing is saying, what can we do to create in the society to minimize the chances of people falling through the cracks? Right now, people who file for bankruptcy, 40% of the people who file for bankruptcy cannot pay for their medical bills, right? That doesn't happen in any other country in the world. I've lived in Italy, I've lived in a lot of other countries where this is not the case. And so I think when we have social democracy, we're talking about these institutions from cradle to grave, a universal pre-K, universal college, old age pension programs, disability benefits, unemployment insurance, paid family leave, paid sick leave. These institutions and programs that really support people at every phase of their society, that's what I'm arguing that we need to transition and develop more of. And we have some of those seeds, right? We have unemployment insurance, we have Social Security, we have Social Security disability, and I'm saying that we strengthen that program throughout. Right now, the people who have the highest poverty rate in our district are children. Right? Children tend to, especially younger children, because their parents are earlier in their workforce career, they don't have, have the income that they would if the child was in high school. For instance, if you look at the poverty rate of children who are 18 versus children who are 3 years old, children who are 18 have a much lower poverty rate because their parents have much more experience. And so we want to, with social democracy, build institutions so nobody goes without. And so that, I think, is what I'm looking to build, as I mentioned, like making sure that we provide for people at every phase in their life.
Did that help? No, we'll work on it. All right.
We'll work on that. We'll work on that.
Okay, so but my next question is, I'm assuming you're a registered Democrat, I'm assuming?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so you are a registered Democrat, but you think and speak like an independent. So there's a reason why Democrats don't do what we need them to do. And there's a reason why they are being ran over. So why are you not an independent, since you obviously think and speak like one?
Because I think about what the Democratic Party represented. I mentioned the New Deal.
You said represented, which is past tense.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. It
All right.
is past tense, and I think the party has lost its way. And one of the things I haven't talked about is the influence of money in politics. In my campaign, I'm not taking any corporate money. I'm not taking any PAC money. It's just small donor donations. That's the only thing I'm taking. And the reason why is the status quo, the current state of events that we have, is being maintained because of the enormous influence of money and power, these malign forces that have locked the game in where they are the winners and the rest of society is the losers.
Yeah.
And I'm not accepting any money from these forces. You look at, for instance, the Clinton administration, one of the things that he did was deregulate Wall Street. He got rid of Glass-Steagall. That was a New Deal bill that separated investment banking from commercial banking. And he was rewarded financially, as long as a lot of people in the administration, for doing so. But deregulating in the late 90s led to the dot-com bubble in the 07-08 crash in the 2000s, right? So we have to keep in mind that when we take these donations from individuals, where that's corporate lobbyists in the oil and gas space, in the medicine space, in finance, that you are beholden to them, right? And we need to reduce that influence. We need to get rid of Citizens United. Money is not speech. We need to take money out of politics. And even if money was speech, your speech is limited, right? You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You can't slander someone. You can't defame someone. So even if money was speech, we could still restrict it, right? But it's not speech. And so we need to get closer to one man, one vote, instead of $1 being able to influence more than one man can. So I think that's why I speak this language that seems like an independent, because I think I'm a throwback to the Democratic area. I keep on bringing up the New Deal,
Yeah.
bringing up the Great Society, Medicare, Medicaid, social movements, Fannie Lou Hamer, these people that, Byron Rustin, SNCC, right? These social movements that put pressure on democratic institutions, right? MLK was pressuring a Democratic president, right? Like that's the way that I believe that we have to operate, is that we have to get the money out of politics, and we have to use social movements in order to pressure political leaders.
Yeah, those social movements were impactful, because there was a lot of grassroots mobilization and organization. Because your name isn't as known as other names are. What are you doing? What can you do to strengthen your grassroots mobilizing, the organizing efforts so that people know who Brother Kivan is?
Yeah, I think this is where social media comes in a lot. We've seen Zoran Mamdani, for instance, right? He was outraised tremendously by Mayor Cuomo in the Democratic primary. I think Mayor Cuomo, former Governor Cuomo raised something on the order of around $50 million, and Mamdani raised about $7 million. And I'm not saying that I have the political talent of Zoran Mamdani, but I think one of the things that he showed for candidates like myself is that you have to build a very active social media following. And this goes to other questions that we talked about, educating the community. So I think that I can really begin building my profile and educating the community at the same time via more involvement in social media. I think that's especially where young people are concentrating on. If you look at the median age in the district, so the median age is what age group are 50% of the people younger than or older than? The median age here is 33 in this county, right? So 50% of this, or this district rather, 50% of this district is 33 and under. And so for those 33 and unders, I think social media is going to be very impactful. And even for those individuals like myself who are older than the median age, I'm 38 years old, social media, people I think are shying away from traditional media. You see, MSNBC is changing its name to MS Now. I think that there's been a lot of faith that the mainstream media has lost, lying us into the Iraq war and all these other things. And so using these non-traditional channels is, I think, a way that I can raise my profile and also educate our community at the same time.
Amen. Ms. Faulkner?
Yes, ma'am.
Sheila Jackson Lee. She not only worked her district, but she crossed those lines.
Oh, good one, good
Like
one.
I live in South Park, which is 77033. We are that forgotten community. Now, when you take the lead, like Sheila did, and travel across those lines and help everyone that needs the help, not only her district, but I'm in 09. So will you do the same?
Absolutely. I'm going to go where people are needed, where help is needed. Obviously, as a representative of District 18, that's going to be first and foremost where my interest lies. But I also think crossing those lines into other districts, I think one of the ways that we can do to help other districts is we've talked a lot about representation. We have to completely change the way that districts are being apportioned. I mentioned that the House should be bigger than 435 seats. We need to have multi-member districts that people can run on a slate. So instead of electing a single member at a time, let's say we have a geographic boundary that would include, 09, 7709, or one of the other districts, and we would be able to elect multiple members to the House based on a region. And this is the way the United States used to work. And the reason this changed was in the 60s, this was something that Jim Crow, they used to have these multi-member slates, and they would use that as a way to further disenfranchise Black representatives. Obviously, we have to strengthen the Voting Rights Act and other changes to our voting institutions, but I think that we should bring back multi-member districts, so we would have larger geographic districts and you would elect multiple members. And I think that would also help with the representation issue as well too. So yes, I'd be willing to go to these neighboring districts, but I also think making sure that these districts have more adequate representation via something like multi-member voting, that's something that I also would encourage as well too, changes to that 1967 law, which was well intentioned, as I mentioned, which, tried to interrupt Jim Crow railroading, minority districts.
Amen. Good answer. Have you thought about how you're going to maneuver per the redrawing of these political lines? Have you thought about that? If so, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, so the first thing I wanted to say about the redistricting is it's taken as a given that these are going to be Republican districts, right? And you know, I mentioned the New Deal. Texas was a Democratic state in the New Deal. The last time they voted for a Democrat for president was 1976. Ronald Reagan won Harris County by about 13 points, but last year Kamala Harris won Harris County by about 6 points.
Which is why they redistrict.
Exactly.
They drew the line.
Exactly. I looked as recently as 2000. As recently as 2000, there were more Democrats in the Texas State House than there were Republicans. These things aren't fixed. Voters aren't fixed in their beliefs. If you aren't meeting the demands of the voters, as I mentioned, Harris County voted for Ronald Reagan in 1980, but then voted for Kamala Harris in 2024. And so I don't believe that even with redrawn districts, that it's a given, that it's a formality, that it's just an accomplished like a fact that these are just guaranteed Democratic districts. We've seen what has happened to the Democratic districts in the South, these Hispanic districts that line the border. These were districts that voted, I think, for Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden by 20, 30 points. And, you know, Trump won them recently by 5, 10 points. So they had about 40 to 50 point swings in these districts. So that would be my first concern. My first concern is anyone who's saying that redistricting is going to occur, it's a guarantee that these voters are going to be Republican or Democratic. No, these voters are still up for grabs. You still have to fight for these voters. And I'm willing to fight for these voters. So that's the first thing I would say. And then secondly, to the expanse of the district, I think that, yeah, you know, I'm willing to go down, I think stretch a little bit more south, a little bit towards the Sugar Land side. And so it doesn't have quite the continuity with the core urban area that was Houston, but you know, these are communities that also have similar needs. As I mentioned, the social safety net is something that extends to, you know, Republicans obviously want healthcare, right? Republicans want pre-K to send their kids to. Republicans want old age pension like Social Security to retire into. And so I think this is a message that is going to resonate, that isn't partisan, to say that we build a society that from cradle to grave will support American citizens.
Unfortunately, people will hear your message, agree with your message, but not vote for you just because of that D, unfortunately. If you I won't say had to, but would you be open to changing that D to an I so that you don't lose many votes because people just see the D and assume all sorts of things? Would you be open to changing to an independent as opposed to a straight Democrat?
I mean, it's definitely something worth considering. I think this is the Gallup polling. This is the least popular the Democratic Party has ever been in the history of like, what, 50, 60 years.
Understandably so, yeah.
Exactly, like we talked about, what are they delivering? So I think it's, as I mentioned, my antagonism that I have towards the Democratic Party, that they have not delivered, that they have left the party of the working class, right? The material needs of our people are not being met. I think that when people listen to me and understand that, no, I'm not willing to just completely co-sign everything that Chuck Schumer or AIPAC Shakur says, you know, I'm not willing to do that. And I think when people hear that, they will understand that, yeah, I'm saying I'm a Democrat, but I have these very independent minded principles. I'm an independent thinker. And so I think that I can explain that without necessarily having to change the party identification. But that is definitely something I've thought about. As you mentioned, this is a historically lowest rating ever for the Democratic Party.
Right. Okay. You talked about getting big money out of politics. People have been saying that forever. Good idea. I just don't sure. I'm not sure about how we actually go about making that a reality. So tangibly, methodically speaking, how would you begin to maneuver to get big money out of politics? How would you do that?
Yeah, so I think that one of the first things that we can do is go back to Citizens United, right? So we can actually pass legislation that says money is not speech. And we have passed campaign finance laws before in the past. Like if you look at what happened with under the Nixon administration, we passed campaign finance laws. There's a great article from The Atlantic in the 70s about milk money, how the milk producers wanted to basically bribe Nixon in order to get different legislation, and they would just send envelopes and literally just bags of money. And we had campaign finance reform laws that were passed. So now whenever you donate money, you have to, you know, write your employer, your address, right? Like you have to have these different institutions so that we know that this is not a straw donation, that this is an actual person. So I think that if we look at making stronger campaign finance laws, we introduced something like a public financing model. I brought up Zohran Mamdani in New York before. New York has a public financing model. So for candidates who raise a certain amount of money, you will get a match via state dollars. I think that's another thing that we can do to reduce the influence of money, because then we have smaller candidates who have access to these public pools of money that they can, then draw from. But I think ultimately it's gonna have to be legislation
Yep.
that just says that this is illegal, right?
Yep.
Like, and we've had legislation that has says certain practices are illegal, right? Stock buybacks. We see companies, instead of investing in building new factories or better compensating their workforce or training their workforce, they just buy back their stock and increase their compensation.
That's right.
That used to be illegal.
Yep.
We had a law from 1940 to 1980 something that made stock buybacks illegal. Some practices just need to be illegal, and these massive donations that are completely unknown, right? These dark pools of money. They talk about money being speech, but then you don't know who donated to that PAC. How is it speech if I don't know who said it?
Right.
Right. And so we need to get back to
Right.
writing laws that just flat out outlaw this practice. That's going to be the way forward. And as I mentioned, things we can do while that's happening is public financing models that support alternative candidates while they get rid of these onerous kind of role of money.
Okay. Ms. Fonda?
Ms. Fonda?
Question for,
Yes, ma'am.
if you should lose, will you offer your service to the women?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I want to make sure that the 18th has the best representation, right? And I think that I believe in a very competitive primary. The most competitive primary in my life that I can remember is the 2008 primary between Hillary Clinton and Obama. That was a complete knife fight. That was a drag out fight. But what was the result of that? A two-term president, wildly popular. And so I think that if we have the confrontation, if we have the primary that we should have in order to let the voters choose, I'm completely willing to respect whatever the voters choose and will help, whatever candidate maybe if it's not myself.
Good answer.
Thank you.
Do you think, well, I want to think with you. The things that are happening right now in America are very close to fascism. Do you see that being a realistic development in America right now?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we could start with what happened with Intel recently, right?
Yeah.
But the Biden administration passed the CHIPS Act, that these were supposed to be grants. And I'm not opposed to government ownership in certain companies. We saw that during the financial crisis. The government bought shares in GM and other companies in Detroit, helped them right the ship, fix their books, and then sold off those shares. So I'm not opposed to government intervention in terms of having activity that buys shares is more interventionist in the market. But what happened with Intel is the legislation was written for it to be a grant, and Trump just converted the grant and said that no, this is actually equity now. We own this. And I think this is one of the concerns that we have about seeing fascism is when you see the state capitalism, when the state starts taking control of corporations, not to make sure that we are minimizing inequality or that you and I all have a share in prosperity, but in order to make these authoritarian demands. We see this going on with NVIDIA, where I think 10-15% of their sales in China, they have to give back to the government. I think that we are seeing a lot of intervention in the private sector in line with fascism. Another thing that we're seeing that's completely, I think, in line with fascism is these unmarked police cars and unmarked officers has to stop. If you are indistinguishable from a kidnapping, that cannot be law enforcement. I need to see somebody who is interacting with law enforcement in a marked vehicle with badge numbers and clear police uniforms. And I'm okay. People get jammed up. Tough times happen, right? But if I see somebody being abducted into a vehicle with people with masks and no law enforcement markings anywhere, this is indistinguishable from a kidnapping, this Gestapo secret police type thing. This is unacceptable. And so I do see a lot of movement in that direction that I think is very alarming.
Yeah, amen. On your Instagram page, you talk about the importance of regulatory reforms,
yes,
as well as worker rights. Can you tie those two together as relates to the importance of both and how you're going to help us be stronger in each area?
Yeah, so we look at something like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB, that has been completely gutted by the Trump administration. The CFPB was doing something like maxing overdraft fees. Companies charge $35 for overdraft fees. CFPB was going to take that down to $8 for an overdraft fee. Whenever these financial institutions have taken advantage of people and not made it easy to get your money back, or these companies make it very difficult for you to cancel a subscription, one of the things that the Biden, I'm blanking on Lena Khan's, the Fair Trade Commission, one of the things that they had done was institute one click to cancel. You know how you can do one click to sign up? But if you want to cancel a subscription, you got to call 6 people. One of them's in India, and it's something. One click to cancel, right? So having these consumer reforms, these consumer protections that protect us from predatory behavior, whether that's by financial institutions or by companies, that's completely paramount. And then we look at things like worker protections. Are you working in a safe work environment? We look at things like OSHA and making sure that we have the ability to investigate workplaces and make sure that people are risking their lives. My mom works in Exxon down in Baytown. People can die at her workplace. I always joke that if people die in my workplace, they die of boredom. But people are actually exposed to legitimate chance of dying. And we need to have these regulatory bodies, as I mentioned, OSHA, CFPB, FTC. We need to be protecting consumers from being defrauded. We need to be protecting workers. One of the things that's going on that's not talked about is the wage stuff for the minimum wage workers. I remember reading a study, I think you look at 10 states in the US, and a lot of these minimum wage workers, they have their wages being stolen from them. Right? People aren't looking at their paychecks very closely. I've had this happen in terms of not necessarily it being theft, but they weren't putting in the amount of money that they were supposed to be adding to my paycheck for, whatever program that you sign up for. It's supposed to be some kind of match program. And so I think that we need to make sure that people's wages aren't being stolen, that people are leaving to go to work and they are safe at their workplace and coming home with all their fingers and just the way that they left their house. I think it's paramount that we have these protections.
Yeah. Have you by any chance seen the documentary Bad Faith?
No, I've not.
Have you seen Rigged?
Yes, I've heard about Rigged. Yes.
You've seen it or you heard about
I've heard about it. I've heard
Okay,
about it.
you gotta watch it.
Okay.
And Bad Faith.
Yeah.
I'm gonna send you the links.
Okay.
You already know that the vote is extremely important, obviously. But it's been under attack for a minute. And as these two in particular will tell you, our people, grassroots people, don't understand the value and importance of the vote. And we're always trying to get people to understand if it wasn't important, then why did they try so hard to take it from you?
Exactly.
Right. So I mentioned those two documentaries in particular because they talk about in detail how your vote is being taken from you. So question, how are you going to further press upon people the importance of the vote, and what are you going to do to help protect the vote?
Yeah, so I think about this in both a short-term and a long-term way.
As you should.
Yeah. So let's start with the long term, the grand vision, and then we'll kind of get back to the short term. So long term, I want people to be aware of the anti-democratic institutions that are meant to thwart your vote. Right, the Electoral College. If you look at the Electoral Colleges when it was originally written, it didn't care about what the states voted. It was supposed to be just a bunch of guys getting together and actually deciding who was supposed to be president. Right. If you look at something like the Senate, right? Why does 40 million people, live in California? They have 2 senators, just like Wyoming, who has 500,000 people, and they have 500,000 cows.
Yeah.
Right. And so we need to let people become aware in the long term that there are these institutions that are trying to dilute or suppress the will of the people by having these super democratic structures. So that's the long-term goal. But in the short-term goal, as I mentioned, making more representation is going to demand things like expanding the House, right? The House right now is being set to 435 votes, making it this finite, this fixed solution that stops the United States from being representative of the actual population where the actual population is. And so I would encourage, expanding the House of Representatives to make sure that population centers have the correct amount of influence in our local politics. And then I also think in terms of preserving the vote, we need to have voting as a holiday, right? We need to expand the franchise. We need to have felons and people who have been formerly incarcerated. They need to vote. There's nothing in the Constitution that says if you've been incarcerated that you lose the right to vote. And so I think, and this is what I mentioned going back to the New Deal and these other eras, whenever you run into a problem, what should you do? You should expand the franchise, right? When we had the Civil War, what did we do? We expanded the franchise, 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. We made direct election of senators. the 17th Amendment. We let women vote, the 19th Amendment. Every time our Constitution and our country has come into a crisis, the answer has been to expand the franchise. And I would look at ways of expanding the franchise, longer early voting periods, voting as a holiday, enfranchising felons, making sure that more people can participate in our democratic process. That's going to lead to better outcomes.
I agree. I have two questions in closing, before I ask everybody. No one else has any questions? Everybody good? Okay. You're doing great, no doubt. Yeah, I'm happy you're here, but I really am for a lot of reasons. Okay, final two questions. Why is voting for you the best vote a person can make for this race?
As I mentioned, vote for me is the best vote for this race because of the dynamics that are occurring in the future and also the social welfare state. So I'll start with the dynamics in the future. We are going to see a lot of displacement and changes that are going to occur from artificial intelligence and AI growth. And a lot of these other candidates, they're not thinking about the future that our children are going to have. We told kids for over a decade, learn to code, learn to code. Now all these official artificial intelligence applications, they're taking all the jobs of these junior individuals.
Right.
The unemployment rate for our college graduates right now, if you look at the unemployment rate for college graduates who are men, it's the exact same as college graduates, sorry, as men who did not graduate from college. That premium that people used to enjoy from graduating from college, especially for men, is gone. It still exists a little bit for women, but it's gone for men. So being aware of the society, not only is AI going to displace jobs, it's going to do something like it demands fresh water to cool a lot of the machinery. It demands tremendous amounts of electricity in order to power. And so we're going to have these extreme environmental effects. We're going to have extreme job displacement and job dislocation. And none of these other candidates are saying that. Everybody's saying, oh, just job retraining, job retraining. I'm telling you, I teach the data science program at one of the top universities in the country. These kids aren't finding jobs. Okay, this is going to be a problem when we get to 10, 20, 25% unemployment, which is certainly possible. What are we going to do as a society? Who's talking about those problems? We're not just going to do job retraining. I saw statistics the other day that computer science majors have a higher unemployment rate than art history majors. You know, we told everybody to go into computer science, and look what is occurring. And so I think this vision of the sea change that is occurring in our society, what do we do with that? So I think we need a sovereign wealth fund in order to manage this and manage AI. So
What did you say, sovereign wealth fund?
Sovereign wealth fund.
Okay.
Yeah. So part ownership of this. So if an AI company gets to a certain market cap, a certain size in the stock market, the US government should buy a 5% or 10% stake. So we have a board member, so we have voting rights. So we can say we need some democratic influence in these companies, right? That's something that these other candidates are not talking to you about. When you look at right now, NVIDIA is 8% of the stock market. No company in the history of the United States has made up 8% of the stock market before, right? These dramatic changes around technology that are occurring, I think I'm very well versed with my technical background, both being an instructor at the University of Washington, but also practicing data science as my profession to help our society look at these changes that are occurring. And then lastly, the main reason I think I set myself apart is, as I mentioned, the belief in the social welfare state. Why are we doing unemployment insurance? Why are we doing Social Security? Why are we doing a child tax credit, child allowance, all of these programs? We are doing this because most Americans are not attached to the labor force. At some point in your life, you will not be attached to the labor force. You mentioned you being 54. Hopefully you can retire soon. You know, I was a student for most of my life. You know, I've been around about 4 decades, but I was fortunate enough to finish my PhD. I didn't get out of school till I was 30. Right. And so we know that students don't generate a lot of income because they're going to school. We know that there are different phases in your life that you are going to need support via society to help push you forward. And those returns will get paid back to society. I mentioned being a national, being sponsored by the National Science Foundation for my graduate work. That stipend that I got was about $30,000. I pay more than that in taxes, right? As an investment society, if we invest in our young children, if we put them through capable pre-Ks and capable public schools, that return is going to happen on the back end, right? We are going to reap what we sow.
Yeah.
And I think that we should sow an investment society that looks out for all individuals, not just individuals who are tied to the labor market, which is what I think a lot of the current candidates are focusing on. They're not focusing on the wide view of the 330 million Americans, and they are more focused on a narrower slice.
Yeah, you have a few advantages over the other candidates. One of which is a huge one, is that you understand data and the importance of it.
Yes.
And the history of these social programs. None of the other candidates are speaking that way because they're just not there. And I think I applaud your willingness to lend your expertise to help whomever is going to be the front runner. I just don't know if they'll accept it, but we'll see. You know, maybe it'll be you and you don't have to offer it. And I only have one more question, but your answer gave me another question, so this is your fault. I was almost done. You got a boogie?
I gotta go.
You got a boogie. Yeah, thank you, sis, for coming. I appreciate it. So AI is a big thing. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think the industry is going to continue to move as it's moving. So there are good things, which you already know, to AI, but there are bad things as well, like the data centers on the back end with the water and the space and the pollution and all that good stuff. How would you as a congressman representing the 18th and being leadership in the country, how would you balance the harmful environmental aspects of these data centers with the reality that AI is here to stay?
Yeah, I think that these AI data centers, they don't have to be built at the scale that they are being built,
okay.
right? So this is the revolution that DeepSeek, the Chinese
Yeah.
large language model showed. So they had about 1/75th of the capacity that these large companies like ChatGPT used to train.
Yeah.
So with 1/75th of the capacity, they trained a similarly efficient model. You can train these models on your phone.
Mhm.
Right now on your phone, we have the hardware on our phones to train these models. We don't have to build these incredibly large data centers that put the environment at risk in not only just the environment, just training of these models. People have to, for the model to identify, is this sexually explicit material, if this is harassment, somebody has to look at it
That's right.
with their own eyes.
That's right.
And go through that. And then we are relying on people in the developing world to do this. I was reading studies about people in Kenya and South America and other parts of the world that are dealing with a lot of economic insecurity, and how people are, reviewing and labeling these features for the models, and just the mental toll of looking at child sexual assault materials all day so that a large language model can adequately cope with it when presented with it. And so I think that we can reduce the psychological and environmental destruction that AI is creating by making it function on a smaller scale. As I mentioned, DeepSeek showed that you don't have to have all this compute capacity with data centers all over the place that are conflicting, water use. We have to have a concern if the data center needs water, are they going to cut off residential water? If the data center needs electricity, are they going to cut off residential electricity? We can avoid this by having these firms move to smaller facilities or smaller tools in order to do their computation, which is the movement that they were headed in originally. The reason why they want to do all these data centers is it makes a barrier to entry. If you are a startup and you want to make an AI and they're like, oh, well, you need hundreds of billions of dollars of chips in the data center, that makes a barrier to entry instead of saying, oh, you can actually do the training on your phone. Then anybody can get to it. So that's part of the reason they're doing it. They want a barrier to entry. They want less competitors.
Okay, good answer. Good answer. Yes, ma'am.
So our votes will be split between, 26, 20, how many can?
As of right now, there are 26.
Yes. Still?
Yeah, 2 dropped that we talked about on the drive over. So as of right now, there's 26. I don't know what it's gonna be in the week or something. Yeah, it's still alive.
So I guess my question to you is it possible, like, since it's being split between so many people, is it possible to, how is it possible to still get I love what you're saying. But it just makes me wonder how it's possible for the community to still get the best person for the job to represent.
Yeah.
I mean, because everybody feels like they're the best candidate. And
That's true.
I
Yeah.
heard,
Yeah.
I heard several, and I think they're good, but the vote is split between all those people. And I'm just, I don't know.
Realistically speaking, with all these people, how can we?
How can, just how.
How can he win, or how can?
No, how can, as a community, we figure out, how do we end up with the best candidate?
I think this is democracy in action. I think it's messy, right? I think it would be, would we prefer that, the Democratic Party just pick 2 people and say, these are the only 2 people that are going to run and everyone's going to have to vote for them? That's not democracy, right? That's not people's voices being heard. Democracy is the governed are the governors, right? And so this is part of it is being messy, right? Like we could be in an authoritarian situation where one person is selected or 1 or 2 people are selected by a party. As I mentioned, direct election of senators. You and I previously couldn't vote for our senator. That's an amendment that changed that. Without the 17th Amendment, senators used to be elected by the state house. So the Texas State House used to elect all the Texas senators until the 17th Amendment. That's not good. That's not democracy in action, right? Democracy in action is the people would be able to choose who their senators are. And so I agree that it's messy, right? You know, you mentioned the amount of candidates. I agree that this is messy, but to me, the alternative is much worse, which is that our choices are circumscribed by people outside of the district telling us who to vote for. So like I said, I believe in democracy. I believe that the people will be able to make the best choice via all these candidates.
That's a
I'm
good
sorry,
answer.
This is my last question. Was your question answered?
Yeah, I mean, cause I'm just praying that we get the best person for our.
It's a good
I
realistic
think-
answer though, man. Yeah, I like the answer, yeah, but I can dig it, yeah, yes, man.
Yes, Ms. Swanton?
How do we end up with?
How should I ask this question?
Honestly,
I'm in 9 right now. But in 26, I may be in 18. So whoever I voted for now
Yeah.
in November.
yeah,
And then in, what is it, May of next year?
Well, there's gonna be a runoff. So I think what's gonna happen, unless somebody hits 50%, there's gonna be a runoff in January. So there may be another election, and then there will be another election in the fall of November.
Yeah.
That's good.
yeah, and I think there's definitely gonna be a runoff, so it's pretty much guaranteed.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
What if I didn't vote for that person who won? I'm gonna be reluctant to go to the polls, which I know better. I better go to the polls. And a lot of people will not go.
Mm.
What suggestion do you have to get those people
To the
to
poll?
get out their hinds and go to the poll?
I think our democracy it's established, it's decided by the people who show up. And I think that's the message that we have to get into people, that a very small amount of people can lead to radical change. Like if you look at the founding of this country, it's, you know, like 100 guys who were upset with the tea tax and the stamp tax, who threw a bunch of stuff over a ship and wrote a constitution. Think of all the millions of people who were present in America at that time who had no involvement, no role in it. I think that we need to convince people that they need to show up so they can be counted, so they can be part of the decisions, right? As mentioned, democracy is the governed are the governors, right? And if you were going to be governed, if you were going to have these rules that tell you, you know, where you send your kids to school, or how insurance is done, or if we're going to have supplemental nutritional benefits and all these other things, if you are going to be governed, you have to view yourself as a governor. You have to equip yourself with the education so that you can be a governor, but you also have to participate in the system.
Right.
So you can be a governor as well too. And that's what I would say is, we need to encourage the belief in democracy with people. I think this is why the House is so good. The House is every 2 years. You're very responsive. This is the other problem I have with the Senate. The Senate is every 6 years. So your senator does something, you know, year one, he's hiding out for 5 years, right? You know, if I do something in the House, I'm gonna hear about it in like 18 months. Right? And so that allows people to have a direct influence, a very reactive influence to the politics. I would try to build the belief in people that you need to be a governor. You need to view yourself as a governor, somebody who's educated, somebody who participates, if you want to be somebody who's governed.
Can I add to that? I like that pitch, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's the 30-somethings that's like, feel like they're voting count. That's just my perception.
You know, he's a 30-something, right? Yeah.
So I'm just saying, because, you know, put that out there to that age bracket, whatever, because, you know, our generation, baby boomers, we know we have to vote.
How old is your son? The one that was videotaped?
His age,
The same age, okay.
yeah, so not just your general, I mean, just from people that I know. So, you know, not my children, they know better. I
Yeah.
mean,
They better know better.
They better know better, if they don't, then.
Yeah, you did your part.
So, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So just, I think that's a good pitch, and I hope you're pitching that to your generation and younger, because, you know.
They need to hear it, yeah.
I'm 75 years old,
Yeah.
but I got a
I had no
life.
idea.
And like you said, Tamani, I'm more like a rebel.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yeah, you can take that more like off.
Yeah, but anyway, good job.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you guys.
Yes.
Yvonne, Ms. Van der Wil, thank you guys.
Okay, last question, how can people support you if they like what you've said, or be a part of your team, and closing comments as relates to your candidacy?
Yeah, well, thanks again for all the questions. I really appreciate everybody coming out and your input and really, you know, trying to drill down in some of these issues that are very important and at the front of mind. If you want to support the campaign, kivanforcongress.com. It has all the links to our issues, our donate page. You can volunteer. There's a lot of different ways that you can contribute. We have, social media, Kivan for Congress or Kivan for Texas. Like, share, spread the word via your social media channels. So yeah, I would just say go to the website, go to the social media, and spread the message that way. And as I would like to say in my closing remarks, right, for me, it's all about, and I've talked about this a lot, but I'm going to beat it till it's already a dead horse, so it's not complaining, right? It's all about the social welfare state. It's about the social safety net. What does it mean to be an American? Does it mean when you're American that when you turn 26, you're a child, you lose your health insurance, right? Does it mean that you lose your job, you lose your health insurance? Does it mean that you have to be a young person and go hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt to get an education? It doesn't mean that if you want to start a family that you are going to be living in poverty, right? As I mentioned, children and young children are the highest poverty group in this country, right? We know where the pitfalls are. We know as a society that people don't make income when they're young, that they make income for this large period in their life and then they retire. And we want to even that out. We want to even out the income that you are going to make in the bulk of your working life, in your retirement, and in your earlier ages. And we need to build a society that from cradle to grave guarantees universal public goods, right? And we can talk about how this is going to be paid for. I didn't even mention that, but we need to raise taxes on the wealthy corporations. I was looking at it. Chevron paid 1.8% in federal income tax in 2021. Absolutely unacceptable.
Yeah.
Right. So the money exists.
Yeah.
We need to tax these large corporations and wealthy individuals who are just completely skirting the tax law in this United States. And that's how we're going to pay for it. But we need a sweeping reforms to make a social welfare state that from cradle to grave guarantees security, economic security, and health to our citizens.
Yeah. All right, brother, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Guys, all right, let me close this thing out. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
All right.
Tony.
Cool, thank you. So this is why we have Thursday morning breakfast. Always bringing people, organizations, insight, information to the community. I don't know about y'all, but I think this brother needs to be as known as all the other candidates, because his answers are not only different and at a higher level, but he connects the history of the country with things that we've already done once before. And we're not doing them now because there's a change in leadership and a change in philosophy and ideology. But that doesn't mean that we, the people, can't push back and get things back to a more fundamental democratic society, which is what the New Deal was all about, which was a big deal and it helped a lot of people. But this country is changing. And if we don't get the people to understand the changes that are happening and why, and then get them to work to get it back on track as far as the kind of America that we want, then it's not going to be an America that we enjoy. So this is why we do this every Thursday morning, because there's so much that we need to better learn and understand. And at the end of the day, with that understanding and that learning, we got to get to work. Because if we're not willing to do the work, you're just talking and complaining, and who wants to hear that? So on that note, thank you again, brother. I'm going to talk to you a little bit before you leave. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see y'all next Thursday. So have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for the questions. I really appreciate the engagement.